I had planned on doing a couple videos on different relays and controls for light commercial and commercial applications maybe. The whole point of me doing these videos is of course just to get the thought process going in your head so you can think about the circuits that you're troubleshooting and wiring and everything. So sequence of operation is always important. Voltage checks are going to be important. All of it's important. So today I'm going to take a minute and really show you a different type of relay. It's the same, but it's different. It looks different. It's called a rib relay. I'll show you some specs and stuff on that. But over the next couple videos, what I plan on doing is just introducing a little bit different take on a relay and the controls, and showing you a few different items. So 2 or 3 videos maybe, and I should kind of have it wrapped up for what I'm going to do and what I'm going for. But I encourage you to take a minute and do some research online elsewhere for the different types of commercial controls. The relays and stuff that we typically use are more of a traditional or a classic type of control where it's more of an on-off situation. There is another one that falls in that category of traditional controls or classic controls, and that's called a PID, PID. So you can look those up. But when you really get into commercial controls and really get into kind of deeper thought processes, is how I'm going to describe it. You have to start looking at hard controls and soft controls and different communicating things and building automation. So the control side of the field is definitely pretty deep. But if you learn the basics on how to think and how these systems are supposed to respond and what these little components do, you'll of course be better for it. So a couple minutes on a rib relay, break down the specs and whatnot, and then we're going to go wire this guy into just a regular old air handler.
I'm going to try to do this without casting shadows or whatnot on here, but this is what you get when you open the box that this rib comes in. Like I said, it's a relay in a box. Right here on the data plate it says relay in a box. I mean, that's their little trademark, their little namesake. So it's nothing more than that. So on top of it, and I'll throw up the spec sheet real quick, but you've got your coil voltages listed, and what we can do here, we have a common connection, and we have 120 volts AC to the coil, or you can use 10 to 30 volts AC or DC on here, and that falls in line with our residential style 24 volt control system. So I'm going to use it in our Aries air handler that we've done before. So coil voltage on this side, and if you look on the other side, there's going to be your switches. You've got a normally closed, a common, and a normally open, and this looks exactly like a Goodman fan board. It looks exactly like a 9340 relay. Like I said, it's too simple. What we'll do is we'll look at the wire colors, the color with the stripe on it. So we've got a white with a yellow stripe, and we've got a white with a blue stripe, and we've got a white with a black. All the striped stuff is your coil voltage related wiring. And then the solid colors, blue, yellow, and orange, that's going to be your switching colors or wires that you're going to use. So I like it because you can mount it into the side of the unit with screws. So they give you 2 screws, probably about 2.5, 3 inches long, probably 2.5. But I can drill a pilot hole and mount them inside a unit, or I can mount them on a panel or through one of the knockouts on the side. I've seen it in the building we're in and on jobs that I've been to out in the field. This is mounted to like a junction box. So you just knock out one of the 1/2-inch knockouts, and you've got more than enough wire to go. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to cap the 120 volt coil voltage connection wire that I have here. I'm going to just cap it and leave it there because you never know if you might want to use this relay somewhere else. And I'm going to use a ring on the end of all the wires that we are going to use today, and you'll see that we're going to put a terminal block in just to try to keep it neat so we can do some voltage checks. This is not a hard relay to understand. I'll show you a picture that I took. I actually took the screw out and looked at it. It's a circuit board. a very small, dedicated circuit board. So it's not very hard to get. It's just you don't see this in a residential air handler very often. But I'm thinking about putting it in mine, just so I can see a red light if I go up in the attic. So let's go wire it up in the shop and do a couple voltage checks and be done. All right, here we go. This is the old resurrected air handler, and this is the one we're going to be working on today. So I'm going to go ahead and start by clearing all this out, because we're replacing this regular 9340 relay with a rib relay. So bear with me. I'll try to fast forward through this. We'll get it done. We're using this in place of a regular 9340 relay. This is maybe a little more light commercial, so it's just a different look, but it's just a relay. If you look at the picture they draw you on the front, then they'll show you the common, normally open and normally closed switches, which we already had in this system before, and they even show you which wires to use for your coil voltage. This one has a 120 volt coil or a 10 to 30 volt AC or DC coil. So we're going to be using that one since we have a 24 volt system, and it should work out pretty well. It's even got that little red LED to tell us when the coil is getting power. So all right, now to like I said, we're going to completely rewire all of this, low voltage, high voltage, everything pretty much. So what I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier for the low voltage connections and stuff is I'm going to install a terminal block, and I'll put it right here. All right, so now we're going to start wiring stuff up. So we've got our transformer here, and if we look, this is the PSC motor terminals. I've got some low voltage for the heat sequencer here. Pull that out the way, put it over here, if it'll stay. There we go. I've got the electric heat wiring. We'll take that off as well. Put that circuit in at the end. And we'll just stick with what we got, okay? So, high voltage power. So on this one, we got a multi-tap transformer. It tells us that black is common and that the red is for a 208 source, and that's what I have here in the shop. So what I'm going to do is real simple. Get that last one out the way, so there's nothing here. All I've got down here is my power. Matter of fact, let me change the camera angle. All right, let's wire this thing up real quick. So we're basically starting from scratch, like I said. So we got our terminal block right here, and if you've listened to anything I've ever said before, and just the way that I think about things, in a 208 240 system you have L1 and L2. We have no neutral, and when you're starting from scratch, it doesn't matter which one you call what. They've labeled L1 as this upper one as you're looking, and L2 as the lower one, but really it depends on the first circuit that you run. So what I'm going to do is power up the transformer, and I've got my red and black leads here. The black is a common on the transformer, so I'm going to call that my L2 side, and I'm going to follow what they've got there. I'm going to put that right there on that terminal, and then my red is going to be my tap for my 208 volts. So I have established my L1 and my L2, and from now on this is my L2 and this one will be my L1. Alright, so that's out the way. That's the primary side of the transformer wired. If I plugged it in now, I'd get 24 volts out of here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how we're going to use this terminal block. I pulled a couple screws out and I put ring terminals on the end, so it should be a little bit neater. But our yellow and blue, we'll use the blue as common, and what I'm going to do here is we're going to put the screw of that terminal block through the ring, and that's how we're going to secure it, kind of make it look neat. And that way, if I ever use one of these or this unit in a video again, you know, it should be set up. So all we're doing is providing a nice little place to terminate our ends for our power source. And now I've got my hot and my common. I could go ahead and just write that there as a friendly reminder if anybody were to come behind me. So one thing that I didn't do last time that I'm going to do this time is last time we made a homemade fuse holder. This time what I'm going to do is I bought some fuse holders off of Amazon, 10 of them in a pack for like $10. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to put my 5-amp fuse in there. So there goes my 5-amp fuse. I put a ring connector on that end, and we're going to start doing the low voltage for this unit. And I'm going to use this just as a one heat, one cool, conventional type electric furnace. So there goes my power, and I've got the fuse in there, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to run this down. There we go. So there's my 24 volt. I need a common. Alright, so we got the common in. We're going to tuck that down here so we can do the low voltage. I'm also going to pull the white down here to do the low voltage for that. For the indoor fan, I'm going to pull the off of this rib relay. The blue with the yellow stripe is the connection for our 10 to 30 volts AC or DC, so I'm going to pull that down. The white and yellow is going to be a common, so we'll leave that one up here, and we'll terminate it over here with this common as well. So stay tuned. I'm going to change the view a little bit and get you down. Alright, so this is like I said, just an old air handler we're going to do. So I'm going to take my 24 volt connection, my white connection, my red connection, my common, and I'm going to try to keep them all about the same length. Okay, and the white one's a little short, so we'll just trim it right here, even with the commons, and then we will go ahead and pull all that off, and that way we can make our low voltage connections to the thermostat that's right here at the corner of the screen, and we'll get that. Alright, so my low voltage connections, I've got my red wire. We're going to tie that to the red, of course. When we power this thing up, I've got my green is going to go here to this rib relay, to that white and blue. I've got my black on my thermostat as my common, so there is my common connection. Get that done, and one more is the white. So it's a little short, so the white is the white. I'm not going to do a yellow because I don't have any air conditioning and I don't want to run another wire, so we're going to keep that about the way, but I would have treated it like it's a standard. So the sequencer is on the white. I got my power coming from my newly installed fuse holder. I've got my green from the thermostat going to the coil on that rib relay, and then I got my common, of course, and we'll get back up top. We got the low voltage down underneath this top plate wired, and what I'm going to have to do now is wire in the common for this rib relay, and I'm also going to have to wire in the common for my heat sequencer. So for the heat sequencer, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to attach it down here with the common that we basically just did. Alright, and what I'll do is I will take these two and I will face them opposite each other, and they'll stack basically. I've seen some guys where they just wire, if you have a big enough terminal for a big enough gauge, they'll wire two of them into one. But if you ever have to undo one, you have to cut it. Okay, so I'm going to take the common from the transformer and I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this rib relay wire back and do the same thing. I'm going to hold the back of it so that it's a gap right here down, and put this one under the bottom side with this one kind of going up, and that way they fit flush as possible. And that's our 24-volt stuff. Well, now that we've got that wired, we're going to wire the switch part of this rib relay. And since it's pretty much the same as a 9340 relay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and label this middle area here common, and then I'm going to label this one as a normally closed. Excuse me, I'm gonna make it normally open since it's closer to the terminal block, and I'll make this one over here normally closed. And that way I've got just a visual reference of how I'm going to wire this. So if you look at the actual rib relay, it will tell you that the blue is a normally closed, the yellow is common, and then orange is your normally open. So what we're going to do is we're going to wire blue, yellow, and orange on the back side. Alright, so we got all those there, and now on this side, this will be basically your connections to power and your motor and then your heat strip. So as we wire it, we know that the speed of the motor, and that one in this case is going to be already done to the black to the high on a simple connected setup like we have here, where the common is used in both the normally open and the normally closed circuit. The way they use it for the fan is to come out your common. So common is going to be our power out of the relay going to our fan speed, and what we have here is we're going to wire from L1, and we're going to wire straight power in to the normally open. Nope. And then on the outlet side of our switch, so we're going to have L1 coming from this terminal block into the sequencer. When the switch closes on a call for heat, then as power goes out to power the heat strip, power is also going to go out, and it's going to go through the normally closed terminal into our rib relay. So that's how that'll be wired up, and it'll make it real easy for us to do voltage checks here in a little bit. So basically the rib relay is set up. We've got our thermostat wired, we've got the low voltage connections here. The only thing that I didn't do, and if you look at it here, we haven't added the high voltage for the heat strip. We'll do that in just a second. But I've got power coming out to my transformer, and I've got power coming back. I've got power going into my fan, and I don't have another terminal there. We have to terminate the L2 side of the fan motor. Since it's a PSC motor here, we've got this yellow wire, and now, you know, pretty much whatever you come off of the terminal block with to power, you have to have a return back for it in most cases. So just to keep it you know, squared up and level. So I do have this little pigtail right here, so I can, if I need to change speeds, I can just undo this and go to a medium or a low speed. So I'm just going to put a piece of black tape around it. That way it doesn't touch anything. And now we'll wire up our heat strip just to finish it out. So pretty much what I did, I'm going to take L1, and then I'm going to go power into the sequencer. And the sequencer, once it's closed, is going to go through our limit here. It's going to pass power into this left heater, and when it comes out, we're going to have another wire over here, and that's a stretch, actually. Yep, that's a stretch, but it gets the point. So we're going to do some voltage checks and be done. Alright, so I've got the rib relay, and I've got the thermostat programmed for a conventional heat-cool system, and I just want to show you, system is off. I'm going to turn the fan from auto to on, and if you give it just a second for the thermostat delay, you'll see how the rib relay responds. It's going to turn that red light on, and then the blower's going to come on. And we can sit here and do our amperage checks if you wanted. And it's pulling about 1.2 amps. As soon as you turn the fan back to the auto position, then that red light's going to go away. So the red light is basically an indicator for whenever the coil has voltage applied to it. Alright, so we can do a couple things. I mean, with the power off, of course, our terminal block is over here. And you can see we're pulling about 208 volts. That power is going to go to the transformer. If I was going to check 24 volts out of the transformer, then I'm going to check over here to our low voltage side of this terminal strip. We got 27 volts going. If we wanted to check the voltage to the coil, I would need to go down to the low voltage that we wired. Take that thermostat or that cap off. And I've got 27 volts on my rib relay coil, and you can see over here that that little LED, that red LED light is on. Alright, so this is L1 and this is L2. So if I was following, I mean, I've only got the fan on, so if I was following, I would follow this going into the normally open. So I've got my L2 over here on this bottom terminal screw of the terminal block. So that's power going in. If the switch is closed, then it'll come out here on the common. So I know that my fan should be running, and of course it is. But look what happens when I check the other one. 0. Why? Because this leg, this normally closed leg over here, has no power on it right now. There's voltage there, but the way that we're reading it is we're on the same side of power, because we're backfeeding actually through this heat sequencer, and it's checking the L2 side. So L2 to L2, if I'm checking in this situation, is 0. No difference. Doesn't mean no power, means no difference. All right. And the red light's still on. And there we go. So now I'm going to turn on the heat, make sure it works that way. So I've got this set up, as I said, for a one-stage heating, and the thermostat is programmed so that the fan is operated by the system, not operated off of the G necessarily in this case. So we're going to let that, if I check, oh, there it goes. So if I check my heater, I've got 17.6 amps. For my fan, I'm going to have, there's the yellow right there. I'm going to have 1.23. So as far as function, we wired it in right. And now what will happen is if I go on my L2 terminal block and I check here, I've got 208. But only because it's already plugged into the terminal. All right, look at what happens with the purple. I've got 208 as well, or 206, and of course my common's going to have 208, 206, something like that. So basically, all three of these right now will read power because they're all actually touching L1. The normally open has L1 coming from the terminal block right here on that wire, so I'm just on the opposite end of where the wire connects. The purple has L1 because my heat relay is sending power across the sequencer switch, and when this heater starts power here on this red wire, it also sends power down that purple one. So it's also an active L1, you could say. And then my common, being the way out of this rib relay, is my high voltage coming out. So my fan is on, and I've got power on that common too. So everything worked good. One low voltage check I'll show you real quick, because this was not meant to be a terribly hard video. There we go. I don't know how many people pay attention, but right here to the left and right of that 5 amp fuse number is a bare piece of metal. If you were ever checking a fuse to see if power was passing across, now I know that as I read it here, power comes in on this side. So if I'm checking there, I can get my 24 volt, and it tells me. But I can check, leave the fuse in play, and check to see if power came out, and check it on that side of the fuse. So don't neglect those two little little indentations where they give you a bare piece of metal. So, but that's a rib relay. It's really nothing different than a 9340 if you buy the proper one. Fairly easy to install, maybe even a little bit neater. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn on the system in heat, and this is an electric setup. So basically what I'm going to show you is that this relay, that LED only comes on when the coil is energized. I've got the thermostat set so that the equipment controls the fan, not the thermostat. So there's not going to be a call on the G circuit here, and that means this little LED is not going to get turned on because there's no 24 volts, you know, on the coil. So you can see here the light is off. My fan is on. If I were to, because we're using this normally closed circuit, so I've got one heat strip on, 17 amps, and I've got my fan on as well, and that's pulling 1.3. So there's no amperage on the normally open because we're not using that switch right now. So power's going through the normally closed switch to turn on our fan, and that rib relay is nothing to do with it right now. So it's a 9340 in a different version. So now I'm just going to turn the fan to the on position at the thermostat, and what you're going to see is this LED is going to light up. We're going to start pulling amp draw through the normally open switch, and we just got coil voltage, or excuse me, voltage to the coil, and that caused the switches to move inside this relay. So we are doing power through the normally closed and out the common, and you can see we're pulling 1.2 amps or so. There should be nothing on this one. That's the normally closed circuit through the rib relay, and there's no power there. So basic stuff that you can do, and it's half of a 9340 relay. There's only one set of contacts instead of the 9340 that has two sets of contacts. So this is a single pole double throw instead of a double pole double throw. So even though it's more used in commercial, you can still apply it using your basic thought process. So now we've done voltage checks, amperage checks, the whole nine. One thing I want to do real quick is, since this is not a standard relay, it is more of a circuit board, I'm going to do some continuity real quick. So we troubleshoot switches based off of if they're open or closed. So I know that this blue to my yellow is a normally closed. So I'm wondering, so I do get continuity through it. If I were to check the orange to the yellow, that's going to be normally open, so no beeps. I could go back to the thermostat, or excuse me, back to the breaker and turn it on, and we could watch the switch close. We can watch this switch close as whenever that LED light, there we go. So the light came on indicating that the coil had voltage, and our normally open switch closed, and we can double check our normally closed switch, and there's no tone there. So all the same checks are still applied to this. what I am going to do is I am going to check the coil resistance. Since I know there's a circuit board in there, I'm going to check and see what it says. In the past, when I've checked solid state controls for continuity, you get these weird readings, or what some people would consider as weird. So I'm going to put this on ohms, set that there, and I'm going to ohm out from here to our connection for the green. Yeah, and I get like, yeah, 2.3 mega ohms. So not your standard 17 ohms for a, or 20 ohms for a 24 volt coil. It's a little bit different, but I would be more concerned with the switch positions versus a open coil kind of thing here. So think about it, apply it, you know, it's all good stuff.